And that's Jake, and that's when I realized that it was your girlfriend and the horse.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do know a thing or two about. Nah, I won't even go into that. How was your weekend, Darian? Your week?
Not physical therapy. It's pretty much my life right now. This weekend though, I transplanted my little sprouts into bigger pots so they can sit them in the sun, get more sun, more root growth, and then hopefully a couple more weeks we'll be able to plant them outside.
You know what's funny is that's what I did all day. Was working on the trees, working on the lawn, and working on plants. So we finally have something in common.
Yeah, you got to be able to grow your own food, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, for those of you tuning in, welcome back. It is another event-filled week. I'm Jake.
I'm Drake.
And this is Jake and Drake Show. And today we have another guest.
Oh, I actually did have one other thing to say too, but oh well, too bad.
What do you want to say?
Hi, guest.
What do you want to say? Say it. Just say it. I'm sorry.
No, we got it. We did also get one of our cats, the princess, a onesie because she's been chewing her fur, and she is the most pathetic looking thing right now. It's funny.
I need a picture of that in the Discord at the end of this.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think Jessica would appreciate that too. She's got quite a few cats herself.
I have had to put them in onesies before as well.
I've never had to put a cat in a onesie, so. But yeah,
it's not easy if they don't enjoy it.
They don't. She doesn't enjoy it, but she is becoming a much more affectionate, it seems, or needy.
I experienced the same thing when I put thunder shirts on my cat. They had to be with me 24/7. I think it's something that makes them like it's a comfort thing when they have that kind of enclosed feeling.
So basically, you put a huggy shirt on them, and then they want more hugs.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll just be glad I've never had to do that. Oh, I hear somebody purring.
Yep, she's really needy right now.
So the one that is purring right now is in a onesie.
Yeah.
Well, she sounds happy.
Well, because she's sitting on my lap and won't go away.
I hear that sitting on Darian's lap won't make anybody happy, especially Darian.
Pretty much. Don't tell my wife.
So, Jessica, tell us a little bit about yourself. Anything you want to share? Open-ended question.
Open-ended question. Well, I will be 33 years old this year. I voted in one presidential election in 33 years, which would have been our most recent one. I'm originally from the north, from Iowa, and moved down to Texas on a whim after I graduated college after getting out of the Army. So I thought I'd come hang out with you guys and bullshit around. For those of you who don't know, I've known Jake since 2008, 9?
2008.
For a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2008, long time. And we often have different views on things.
So what that sounds to me like is Jake's been my bitch longer than he's been your bitch.
I mean, if he's been your bitch since before 2008, yeah, you've had him longer.
I think it was 2007, right, Jake?
What are you talking about? Like when we went to BlizzCon together, or we started playing WoW, or what? I don't know. She played WoW with me too. She played WoW too. She was.
Yeah, this is it. We need to get Capinius on here.
Oh, Cap. Darian knows Cap, by the way. He played Division with him.
Okay.
But yeah, so you were in the Army.
I'm
how many?
Married, no kids.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm not great at this first podcast, so I'm relying on you guys to help drag me through it. No kids. Married recently within the past 2 years. Well, it would have been 2 years, March 9th. So yeah, that's it. Not too much of an exciting life. Worked a lot. attempt to grow things in my garden in Texas, which does not go well compared to Iowa. And that's pretty much it. Not too exciting.
So she was a, where were you? You were a mechanic in the Army, right? You were a 91 Bravo wheel vehicle mechanic, right?
Yes. Originally 63 Bravo before they turned us into the all-wheel. I was a light wheel mechanic.
Right, and you deployed to Africa one time for a little bit.
Africa, yeah, Uganda for a few months, 4 years in Germany, which is where you know me from, and 2 years in South Korea.
Oh, that's right.
But over there, I did not do maintenance work.
Yeah, you were like the in-processing bitch.
Yes, for the 2nd Infantry Division. I basically made everybody do their PT test and took care of their arms room and kept track of all their training.
And
so I knew who was and who wasn't doing their PT test.
Oh yeah, DTMS is a bitch. Yeah, and then now you do health, private health sector stuff.
Yeah, so I'm an X-ray technologist. So the long wording for it is I'm a diagnostic radiologic technologist, but most people just know us as X-ray tech. So I've worked at level 1 trauma hospitals. I've done specialty fluoroscopy for neurosurgeons, podiatrists, pain procedures. Right now I do mobile and in-home care, which primarily you're looking at nursing home care, prisons, ICE detention centers, where we go to them instead of them coming to us.
Oh, right on. And there's one more thing I was going to ask you. Oh, well, we'll get to that later. But yeah, she's a bona fide, certified, frontline worker, veteran, ass kicker, complains a lot, really good people.
I do complain a lot.
Known her a long time. We don't get along on everything, but I think if there's anything, it's like the dynamic of the fact that we're still fucking cordial. We're still friends. We still check up on each other. You know, we call each other if we got a question or a problem. Like, you know, that's one of the things is like I could look at somebody like you and I could be like, hey, you know, she's crazy, or you could like, man, Jake's crazy, but I can ask him for advice because at the end of the day, we're still cool. We can look past our differences. So.
Well, of course. I mean, if we were all the same, we'd be kind of boring as shit. And I guess we'll get into it more when we start talking about the political beliefs. But I'm kind of, if you're not fucking with me, I don't give a shit what you want to believe and do. If it's what makes you happy and makes your life fulfilled, as long as it's not stopping me from fulfilling my life and making myself happy, so be it.
Amen, sister.
But I enjoy that we can openly discuss with each other and voice our differences, and at the end of the day, still be friends.
And for the record, I think you're the first girl we've had on the first female that's on the podcast. Or sorry to gender you too, but you're the first like other thing.
All right, I am a female.
we brought a clam to the sausage party, as you put it.
Well, I kind of feel like I already fit in because it's the Jake and Drake show. So you have a big JD as your logo. And as you know, my maiden name is Dietrich. So you basically have my initials there. So I was like, hey, that's cool. I'll fit right in here. I feel at home already.
Well, I'm going to let Drake jump on you for a minute because I want to hear what Drake's got to say. He's been stroking his pussy for a while, so... I want to hear this conversion of anarchy, and plus I have to hear him jumping off the libertarian bandwagon. So, without any further ado,
well, actually, no need for me to talk. I kind of want to hear our guest. That's why she's here. So tell us more about your political background. You said this was your first election that you voted in.
Yeah. So I grew up in a family that didn't talk about politics. So when I finally did start asking questions, my mom does not vote in anything, period. And I asked her why, and she said, well, I don't feel as if I'm informed enough about issues that politicians and stuff deal with to make a sound choice, so I leave that to people who know what they're doing. So that's kind of my mom's real, boiling it down to a basic idea. My dad does vote, and he does have his beliefs, but it was not something that was talked about. It wasn't dinner table conversation. I was never taken to a voting place when my parents voted. And then I met my husband, and his family is very politically active. He's been being taken to the polls since he was a young kid to see how voting works. His family discusses politics regularly. It's pretty much all his dad talks about. So by proxy, I kind of got pulled into, I guess, paying more attention to politics, voting, what was going on, how it does or doesn't impact us. And so I had never voted when I was younger. I was overseas for the first 6 years of my adult life. I was overseas the first time I could ever vote. And I guess coming from a family that didn't talk about it, it wasn't an important thing. And because the absentee voting process is more difficult, I just guess I never really cared enough to do anything about it. I was also registered with my home of record being the state that I went to mechanic school for, which was Wyoming, which I had only lived in for a year and a half to go to school. So I also didn't feel comfortable voting in local elections for a state that I really had no affiliation or, I guess, I didn't have stock in it. I wasn't going to be there. I wasn't the person living there. I wasn't the person that those politicians were going to affect. So why vote in their election for Wyoming when I know nothing about the state or what's important to it or its economics? So when I got back out of the Army and I met my husband, I started getting more involved in it. I still don't fully believe in this system. I did vote Democrat in the last presidential election. It was not who I would have picked. So it's just I'm learning. I'm kind of learning. I like talking to Jake because I get to see another point of view. My in-laws are very, like, as Jake would call them, libtards. In fact, I think you've gotten into it a few times with my mother-in-law on Facebook, Jake.
Oh, is that Connie?
Yes. So they're very, 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 like, hardcore liberals, and most of his family is. I would say, depending on the topic, I can be very liberal. But like I said, I think it's very topic related.
One thing I want to do real quick, though, is make the distinction between liberal and leftist, because I am liberal. I am, in fact, if you look at classical liberalism, that's what, that's where I would sit. And that's kind of where libertarian lies. But as far as the current state of the Democratic Party, I would not call it very liberal at all anymore. Progressive, perhaps, but certainly not classical liberalism, and certainly much more authoritarian than they used to be.
I would say they're very, I guess the best way I could describe my in-laws, and it's not something I particularly like, is they're very partyist. You follow the party, you vote for the party.
Out of curiosity, are they religious?
No. So my father-in-law is Mexican. He is Catholic. He goes to church regularly. My mother-in-law, me, and my husband all fall within the atheist to agnostic sectors.
The reason I ask is it seems like politics has taken the place of religion with a lot of people, a lot of people who would mock Christianity or any religions really, um, have taken to politics and that's become a religion to them. It's dogmatic. It doesn't matter what the issue is. If the party says it's right, then that's what you go for.
Mm.
So, I'm just, it's something I've been observing. It's and been pondering lately.
That's actually a
I
pretty
definitely
good
can see
observation.
that. Because I think kind of playing on what you're talking about, they've kind of taken that as their dogma. A lot of people, I think each person has their own internal moral compass. I don't think there needs to be an external source, but a lot of people, I think, look to a source for their moral compass. What is acceptable socially? What is right? What's moral? What's ethical? And if you have not been able to convince yourself that there's some supreme deity and a special magic book that tells you what those things are, I can definitely see where you would turn to a political party and kind of latch onto that to guide you. If there's a situation you come upon where you don't know ethically or morally what's the right choice, I'll just do what my party says because in the past they've aligned with my moral or ethical beliefs.
So, out of curiosity, then, before I start jumping into all this stuff, do you understand? I don't. I mean, and I don't know. I don't know you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
But many families get torn apart over politics, or actually, lately, I should say, lately, you've seen like families getting torn apart and people, on social media, which I think is the bane of human evolution. Uh, yeah, but
I
posting on
don't know
social
if I
media.
agree that it's the politics tearing families apart. I think that the politics has allowed people to more openly their beliefs on both fronts. And I think families are tearing apart because they're realizing that certain members of their family have beliefs that are non-conducive to their lifestyle. So if you...
But what would you call then, a journalist writing this article about how, his parents are never going to see their grandkids because they're Trump supporters. They voted for Trump instead of Biden. So I mean,
I think that's their choice. It's their child.
Of course, it's their choice.
Raising it, supporting it.
I mean,
So I'm not super close with my family. Maybe I should start with that when I say these things. I don't have high attachments to people.
No, and I understand that's their choice. I mean, it's their choice to not let the parents see the grandkids just because, for any reason. I mean, it's the parents' rights. However, but those are the reasons being cited. Oh, well, they're going to vote for Trump, so we're not going to let them see our kids, or we're not going to associate with them because they're not supporting the Democrats.
I think it's deeper than that, though. So when I say, if I was to say I'm not going to speak to you because you're voting for Trump, that I agree with you. That would be really stupid if that was the sole reason. But if I say I'm no longer going to speak to you because I know you're voting for Trump because you agree with his racist ideology, you've stated that you're okay with the adultery that he commits on a regular basis and that you're willing to let things like that slide morally and ethically. I'm not going to speak to you anymore because you're voting for Trump because you're okay with X, Y, Z that are no-goes in my belief system, my household, what I want my child to learn. I think that's what it tends to be. People are using, and he may or may not be all of these things, but I think people have taken Trump to be a word that encompasses bigotry and hatred and intolerance. So when they say, I'm not speaking to them because they're a Trump supporter, I think what they're really trying to say is, I'm not speaking to them because they're a bigot and a racist or whatever they believe that the qualities that Trump encapsulates for that individual person.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think Trump's an idiot, but I don't think he's a racist. He's definitely a philanderer, but that should be just like the Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. That's between Bill and his wife until he lies about it under oath. The same with Trump. He could be banging shit. He could be banging Hillary Clinton, and that's up to Melania to speak up and raise a fit about. It's no one else's business. That's between two people, as long as he's not doing illegal shit in the office. I think I don't know. I just see the state of current politics and the parties, even, I should say. I see the state of the parties, both sides, Democrats and Republicans, are becoming much more authoritarian. I don't think anybody can deny both sides do this, Jake, that they will take something and then something the other party does and just run with it. It does, damn the facts. But if it's bad optics, they're gonna try to paint the worst possible story because that's their party. And like the whole kids in cages thing. Trump was continuing Obama's policy, and everybody just had a meltdown. You have AOC going to the fence for a photo op and breaking down in with crocodile tears and all that, and that's one thing. I don't like her. She just annoys me. But because these kids are like in these cages, and now they're Biden continuing the same program. Oh well, no big deal. They're what are they? Temporary holding facilities. Yeah, but it's the same holding facilities that Trump was using. So I do think that, and both sides will do it. And if I can think of one off the top of my head that the Republicans did, I don't know. I'll think of something and chime in. I'm sure.
Can I ask a couple things of Jessica real quick? So, all right.
No.
All right. Sorry. So before I forget, like earlier you were talking about like the religion party aspect. So in your opinion though, do you feel like it's more that a potential voter has like maybe a potential voter already has convictions? You're 16 going on 18 and you already have these convictions, whether it's because of society or your parents, and then you pick a party and you look at like, well, this party thinks this and this party, or do you think a lot of it is somebody picks a party and then their ideologies, what they believe in, is because they picked the party? That's my first question. Do you think somebody has a conviction, picks a party, or they pick a party and they follow convictions?
So I think it's kind of both what you're saying. So I think people have convictions first. So for instance, I have a friend who's extremely religious, and she picked the Republican Party. She voted for Trump. She does not agree with a lot of the things he did. However, because of her convictions on abortion, this and that, she does not feel comfortable voting for the Democrat Party. So she, in my opinion, I guess, by voting for Trump, even though there's some things you don't agree with, you are passively agreeing to those things. So I think that your initial convictions decide what party you pick. And then I think that once because it's like a cult, it's like a social group. Once you've kind of put yourself into that group, and your chances are you're going to start hanging out with other people who are part of that group, right? Surrounding yourself by other Democrats or other Republicans or other libertarians or whatever. then that group begins to influence your convictions, either creating new belief systems or changing and altering the convictions that you came in with. So I think that your initial convictions decide kind of which way you go, but once you've kind of ingrained yourself or entrenched yourself into that group, I think that the group can definitely have an influence on your belief system after that fact. I wish we'd just get rid of parties, because I think that's the big problem is parties put people into a group, and it's like tribal behavior. I mean, we all went through high school. We all know what happens when people get into groups and groups disagree. And we know the outcome of that is bullying, all sorts of stuff. You know, you have conflict. And if we would just take party out of it, instead of it being a group, if they were just individual people running for president, and each individual person got to choose which individual other person they thought was the best fit, I think you could take a lot of that group tribe mentality out of it.
I think you hit the nail on the head with it being both, and with the tribalism comment, but I definitely think is more prevalent now in the age of social media, because people are online. They create these little bubbles, and it's what happens to be popular. Abigail Schreier wrote a book. Oh man, about and it probably is. We're going to word this very, very wrong, and we're going to get canceled and lose the 18 followers or whatever we've got now. But wrote a book about the transgender craze, and how it's harming young girls in particular, because it's become popular. It's become like a fad. Not saying that there isn't true transgender issues, but that it's become a fad, and there's people who have none of the actual real feelings, but it's because it's popular to do, they become that way. And it's the same with politics. I'm seeing, oh well, it's popular to support, Bernie Sanders in particular, we'll say, with the young folk, and so that's kind of how they run. I don't think they actually ever dig deep enough to see and realize what's going on. And part of that's a failure of our school system and what they get taught. I mean, we really need to have actual civics classes and actual economics classes again for them to understand. Oh, well, if the government's just going to give you money and they print it up, that's going to cause inflation and devaluation of the dollar, and that $100 you've got in the bank right now is now going to be worth $90. So it's I think the education system is severely lacking, and it's more focused on the social aspects rather than true education. In those social aspects, that's where they're finding these cliques, these groups, and developing their identity. And that's part of it too, is the collectivism, like you said, with the tribalism and things like that. You find these groups, and everybody is categorized by their group versus the individual. And that's the ultimate minority in the country anymore, is the individual. We need to start looking at that. And that's where I'm at. I'm done with all of that fucking tribalism bullshit.
Let me ask Jessica one more question. I'm sorry, before I forget. And when you were talking about earlier, you voting on topics, right? And I think you had brought up the example where you said something about Trump being racist and bigoted and whatever. But let's assume that's true. Let's assume that he is. Let's assume he's a racist.
I don't actually think he is. I think he's pandering
to
a particular group of people.
Let's just assume that he is.
We'll pretend he is actually a racist.
We could talk about Biden. I don't care. But let's assume that this candidate is a racist. Okay? But let's assume that this candidate has policies that essentially are good policies, whether they're foreign policy, whether they're domestic policy, whether they're trade policies between countries. So let's say the other guy isn't racist and the guy has terrible foreign policy, terrible domestic policy. And let's say that when somebody, yeah, there we go. Everybody's got a cat now. Everybody has got a cat, even though we didn't see Darian's, but we heard it. So if I voted for, and that's I think because we were talking about not being able to visit grandkids. If I voted for somebody, let's say let's say they were obviously racist. Let's say they dropped the N-word or something or whatever. It was just blatantly obvious. You know, it's one thing to assume, oh, okay, well, I think this person's racist because they did something. And it's like, well, maybe there's other motivations for why they do something. Unless they overtly come out and say I'm racist or they say something racist, then that's, you know, that's besides the point. But someone can have a lot of good qualities. I could look at Darian and I could say, well, he's pro-gun, he's this, he's an individualist, he's stay the fuck out of my life, quit taking my fucking money. But at the same time, Darian likes to fuck around. And so he has this one irredeemable quality, but he has all these other good qualities. And you're saying that I essentially shouldn't associate with somebody because at the end of the day, we're all human. We're not perfect. So if I am to vote for somebody and this person is a racist, a blatantly obvious racist, but they take less of my tax money, they keep babies in the womb, they keep us out of wars, they create a lot of jobs, they renegotiate NAFTA, they make people pay their fair share to be in the alliance, the League of Nations, basically. Like, you have all these good qualities, but the one reason you're not going to vote for the person is because they say things that are mean on Twitter and they're blatantly, obviously a racist. Okay, I get it, right? But you don't know why I voted for them. So maybe I voted for them because I know this guy's going to keep me out of Iraq or keep me out of Afghanistan and keep more money in my pocket. So if I guess where I'm going with this is when you talk about people that are not associating themselves with somebody because they voted for Trump, is that a fair assumption? Do you think it's fair to assume that just because you voted for somebody, it's because you like racism? Or do you think like, oh, well, why did I don't fucking care. Why did you vote for Trump? I voted for him because I don't want to die in a foreign war unless I really have to. I like keeping my money. Reasons. You see what I'm saying? Because you did say something to the extent of, well, that's their choice. They don't have to let someone see their grandkids because they voted for Trump because they think Trump is a racist, even though maybe there's other you just got finished saying that your friend voted for Trump because of abortion, right? Or the lack thereof. Please proceed.
So to me, like, I feel like a lot of those media stories, when you put it as simply as, well, I'm not voting for you, or I'm not going to talk to you because you voted for Trump and Trump's a racist, so that means you're okay with racism. I don't know if it's that simple. Did they have that conversation with their parents? Did they ask them, why did you vote for Trump, and find something that's a non-starter? So, for instance, if to me, I agree with you in day-to-day person. You can have a flaw. That's not a make or break. If the majority of your qualities are good and you add more positive to my life than you are negatively impacting my life, I'm not going to cut you out because your overall net worth is positive to my life. Okay, so but when you are a leader for an entire country, I think you have to have a bit more decorum and a bit more ability to control your emotional state than what Trump had as a person. So do I think you can vote for him and not be a terrible person? Of course. I have a friend who's one of the nicest people I know. She's a wonderful mother. She's a wonderful friend. She's a wonderful coworker. And she voted for Trump. And I don't think she's a bad person in the least. I do have a hard time knowing that so like I said, we're going off the assumption he is in fact a racist, right? So she has an adopted Chinese son Okay. She is not racist in the least bit. She's an extremely caring. She's. I told you she's very religious. She's very. Jesus loves everyone. I should love everyone. I don't have to agree with what you do, and I don't have to participate in things that I don't agree with. But I will not hate you, tear you down, or treat you as a bad person because of it. So, to me, how she can reconcile voting for somebody who would continuously make inflammatory remarks about the Asian community while raising an Asian son, that directly impacts her loved ones. Because when you're in a leadership position and you say things like that, yes, if it's me and you having a conversation to ourselves, like, it's not impacting the big, greater world. We can be a little bit more, I guess, less careful with what we say, because we can go, you know what, Jake, that wasn't what I meant. He can't do that. When he says something, people listen. And so how she can reconcile, even though he has all these other things that she believes in, right? He's not going to put abortion on the table. I like that because I don't believe in abortion. He's going to push forward Christian values. I like that because I have Christian values. But he's going to say things that cause direct harm to my child. So I just don't understand how you can reconcile that. Yes, he has these good things, but the one bad thing he's doing is so bad to me, in my opinion, that I'd rather just vote for nobody than say, I'm going to let this slide. I'm okay with that, because I'm not okay with it. I think that when you vote for someone who has, and if you're talking small things that aren't, I guess I don't know how to put it, there's just certain topics, I guess, and that's where each and every person has their own certain, just like in dating, you know what I mean? This is a non-starter. Like, I don't want kids, you want kids, this is a no-go. You know what I'm saying? We can have all these other things in common, but a no-go, right? Because it's something that's that important. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like, well, I don't like football and you like football. We can probably get past that. But there, to me, some of the issues that he has, I don't understand. Some of the people, even that I know their values, I know their beliefs, I know what kind of people they are, and I can't understand how they can reconcile being okay with something that, I guess in my mind, should be a non-starter. Period. So I don't know. It's hard. It's all very complicated and confusing. That's why I'm learning.
let's step away from like the party specifically, but in general, what do you think of then the people, individuals, groups, up to and including political parties weaponizing race as far as for political means? Well, again, I was trying to get away from political parties, but you saw it with like the Black Lives Matter movement, which BLM Inc. was one of the major donors to the Biden campaign. It turned out that BLM Inc. was pretty much just a fundraiser for the Democrats or the DNC.
So I feel like rights movements have had to integrate. So because, and I guess kind of as an anarchist, independent libertarian, the government controls so much of everything that if you don't have your hand in the government, you can't really affect change at all in this country, just because of how controlled and set up it is. So if I'm an African American who can't have the same opportunities or basic rights, the only way to go about affecting that change is by putting my hands into the government or getting the government involved somehow. It's not.
See, I disagree.
So they tend to weaponize it.
I think the best way to achieve these social changes is getting the government out of as much as possible, and then letting the individual people.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. But right now, the government is so in it, it's like they don't have any choice but to be tied together.
But everybody has a choice. Right?
I do not believe that. I didn't vote for many years. I think voting is pointless. I
agree with you.
do
I'm
not
to that
think
point now as well.
Individual vote matters one goddamn bit.
Okay, hold on. Jake's sitting over there stewing because he's like thinking in his head, 2,200 votes in Michigan or something like that. I can tell.
No, that's not what I'm thinking at all. I I am thinking I'm like, all right, well, obviously when the podcast ends, we're gonna have to have like a further because we're gonna go over time, obviously. But I'm enjoying like I'll be honest, I never get to talk to Jessica like this. So hearing this side of Jessica is there are a couple things that are enlightening, and a couple of them I'm like, oh, clearly she's wrong. But other than that, there are I'm enjoying listening to her, and I'm enjoying you probing her, giggity, and no, continue. I'm not
on that
stewing.
note, on that note, just stating because no one else has said it yet. The first female guest that you brought on showed us her pussy.
I did.
And
I did.
we weren't even at the 30-minute mark when it happened, dude. That's just
I know.
we're just
And
that
I've
good.
got 2 more pussies you have yet to see, so just saying.
All right. So anyway, I go back to what you were asking her. We're getting off track here.
I think
Half of me wants to burn the whole fucking system down. I fucking hate it all. Let me live on my little plot of land. Leave me the fuck alone. If I need something, I'll make it or fight for it or fuck for it or whatever I gotta do to get it. But just leave me the fuck alone. I'll leave you the fuck alone. And then the other half of me that understands that not everybody can do what everybody else can do. Just because I was able to install my water heater the other day and save $1,900 doesn't mean somebody else has the same skill set that I do and can supply basic needs for themselves. So there's a part of me that wants to help those individuals and understand social structures need to be in place.
True anarchism or wouldn't mean that they have to fend for themselves. They can enter into a voluntary arrangement with another party to fix their water heater or do that sort of thing.
Do you think that our society gives a shit enough about anybody but themselves though to do that? That's the thing. I
think if we didn't have a government, yes. I think if we weren't being pushed into collectivism so much, yes, absolutely. Because when people voluntarily come together, greater things can happen. Whenever the government gets their hands into anything, they fuck it up. I mean, shit.
Do you lump business in with government?
Yes and no.
And not small business. I'm talking large corporate entities.
Yes and no. Real quick, just to kind of tangent a little bit, my take on the big businesses and things like that, I'm fine. If a business wants to grow as big as they want, that's fine. However, the CEO or the principal is responsible for anything that company does. So if I start a business and I build it up and it grows to be bigger than Apple, and then one of my departments goes and starts injecting kids in Indonesia with some poisonous substance for, I don't know, to harvest their skin for special racing shoes, whatever. Then
I was thinking horses, but
there you go for purses. So, but then I am ultimately responsible, even if I was unaware of it. So I think as far as big business, they need to have responsibility. I know there's the corporate veil, and piercing the corporate veil is becoming more and more difficult, but that's what the problem is with big business. Citizens United, I think we need to do away with corporate personhood in the sense of donations. However, I do believe that citizens, if they want to, if George Soros wants to donate $6 billion to Hillary Clinton, her campaign or something like that, so be it. Who gives a fuck? But his name's got to be attached to it.
See, and that's what I wish. I don't have a problem with companies having, I guess, certain beliefs or value systems and supporting things, but I want to know it, because then I can decide where I spend my money and where I don't. You know, I think a lot of businesses want to do this stuff behind the dark because they know they'll lose business from a group or a sector as a result of it. If you're a bakery and you don't want to bake a cake for a gay wedding, that's fine with me. That's your choice as a bakery, but don't think I'll ever buy a cake from you again. I'll just take my money to a bakery that will bake what I need. You know, I think that they should be able to make those choices, but I don't think that they should expect that there aren't repercussions for those choices.
Absolutely.
If you've been running your bakery for 10 years and doing great, and then one day you come out and you say, we don't bake cakes for gay people, and you lose half your business, that's on you. You know, if your business goes under as a result of that decision because people decided they wanted to spend their money elsewhere, well, isn't that what capitalism is supposed to be? Where I decide to spend my dollar is what decides who thrives.
Just to interject on that note, though, to clarify, in the example you're using with the bakery and stuff, they weren't refusing to bake food or do, serve a gay people. It was they weren't going to make the wedding cake for a gay wedding.
To me, it doesn't matter what it is. On gay rights, to me, more power to you. Do whatever you want. I do not care who you marry, who you love, but I am going to choose where I spend my money. For instance, Chick-fil-A, I've never spent a dime at Chick-fil-A. I won't eat, what's the name of that fucking sub place I hate?
Firehouse?
They do cold subs. No.
Subway?
Jimmy John's. I won't spend a dime at Jimmy John's because he trophy hunts. And I disagree with that.
We can start talking about trophy hunting. But
my thing is I'll take my money somewhere else. I don't think that he should have to stop trophy hunting, but I'm just not going to put money in your pocket because I think you're a douchebag and your values don't align with mine. So I'm going to give my money. I would rather give my money to somebody else.
Trophy hunting actually helps the animal populations. They're specially designated.
Hey guys, want to see a 20-pound pussy? There's the feeder.
Man, that's a fat pussy. That's one puffy taco.
But trophy hunting actually is good for the herd, so to speak. Their specific animals are marked. Okay, this is okay, and that's how they're decided. It's not just going out and randomly shooting, any old lion or whatever. It's calling the herd.
And that's fine. They can believe that could be the case. I still disagree with it. There's plenty of other sub shops where I can get my subs from. I think that we should all have those decisions. But kind of on this same topic, Jake, I think I talked to you about this the other day. I do think there is a small subset of essential services that, in my opinion, should be precluded from those rights because they're such either highly skilled services where it's not something that you have a vast choice of options to go to, or
can you give me an example?
Healthcare. So healthcare, for instance, especially with our system, okay, because you have network providers. So like with my insurance, I can only use someone that's in network. So the list of doctors that they allow me to see in order for me to have affordable coverage. What if every doctor in my region, say I have terrible periods, right? They're just the worst. pretty sure I'm bleeding to death every time. And I want to get on birth control because it's the least invasive option that maintains my fertility without doing major medical procedures to help deal with this issue. But all 3 doctors within a 20-mile radius of me that are in network are very strong Catholics. And because they have the freedom of choice, they say, well, we don't believe in birth control. We don't prescribe that to our patients. So now I have no options based off that religious.
We loser?
Maybe. I'm gonna pause it here.
Their own water source, safe, healthy water source, right? It's not cheap, easy to dig a well, and that's if you live somewhere where there is.
Wait, hold on one second. You cut out and froze for a moment. So I didn't hear the last bit of the healthcare thing. Your last saying about like if the doctors in your 20-mile radius had or wouldn't prescribe birth control.
So that's, healthcare is a highly specialized skill, right? You have to have licenses. I can't talk. Licenses and stuff.
Okay, let me ask you some questions on that then, real quick. So are you saying that you then believe that healthcare is a human right that should be provided by the government?
Not provided by the government, but if you are going to, I think that it's a basic human right. I think that healthcare is a basic human right.
Okay, I want to challenge your assumption on that for 1 second. I want to challenge your belief for a moment, so bear with me.
Okay.
How can something be a human right that requires the labor of another?
I mean, everything in human life requires the labor of another. Your mother had to labor to have you.
It doesn't, though. And that was her choice to have me. But, as far as natural rights and human rights and things, and I want to also say the Constitution does not grant us rights. The Constitution affirms our natural rights, or the Bill of Rights and things. But how can somebody say, okay, well, healthcare is a human right, so I should be able to go to the doctor's office and get free healthcare? But that's saying that you are entitled to the labor of another person. And if that doctor says, no, I don't want to do this anymore, and if all the doctors say, no, I don't want to do this anymore, but the government is saying, well, no, this is now a human right and we're providing it, you have to. That's forced. And what is forced labor?
That's not going to happen. So like you were saying, people, when given the option, come together and help each other out, right? There are always going to be people out there that want to provide care for others, right? That's what their passion is, what they enjoy. I don't think that the government providing free healthcare is the answer, but I do think that our system is broken. So for instance, I'm sure within this city there is a doctor who's willing to prescribe me birth control, but I can't access him affordably because my insurance provider is in network only and he's not in my network.
So the main problem is, but that comes back to I want to tell you the solution. The solution is deregulating the insurance market, because that, everybody says, oh, well, look, we've got free market, insurance and stuff, and it's all fucked up. And you're right, it is fucked up. But what they're wrong about is we don't have free market insurance, because you have these networks and only certain providers are allowed to work or to be in certain zones and whatnot. You've got to register and do all this stuff to be able to provide, offer services in these areas.
Dictated by the private insurance company.
That's dictated by the government. So if all those regulations were taken out, your insurance, obviously is dictated by the doctors would need to be signed up to be paid by that insurance company. But if all of a sudden they lifted all those restrictions, and let's just assume for a moment there are 10 insurance providers in every state, and So you have 10 to choose from, and they're all, we'll say, $1,000 a month. If suddenly all the restrictions about the other insurance companies working in these other states are lifted, you now have, instead of 10, you now have 500 to choose from. So the market then will adjust as these insurance companies fight for you as a customer versus, oh, okay, well, there's only 10 of them, 10 providers here, and they can kind of collude without actively sitting and talking and colluding.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you, yes, and I agree with that. I would like to see something done. I don't necessarily think, universal healthcare is the answer, but I do think that there needs to be a change. It's not functioning.
The universal healthcare plans. You're a veteran. Have you dealt with a VA?
I pay for private insurance because well, here's the thing, actually. It depended on where you were. So when I was in Iowa, I used the VA regularly, and they were fan-fucking-tastic. When I broke my arm into 3 pieces, I was seen immediately. I was scheduled for surgery 2 days later. If I was sick, I could walk into my primary care clinic at any time and get seen. And then when I moved to San Antonio, it was a whole different story. I waited 9 months to get assigned a primary care provider. I got a really rare ear condition and sat for 9 hours in an emergency room waiting to be seen. And after that experience is when I stopped utilizing VA healthcare, because the veteran load to, facility availability here in San Antonio is so disproportionate that the care lacks as a result. Whereas in Iowa, where there's a very low veteran population, the healthcare was quite outstanding. So I've experienced it in 2 different places and had 2 very different experiences.
But can you imagine everybody having to use a VA system? That's government healthcare. That's what it would be if we had universal healthcare that Bernie was screaming about and certain politicians are still screaming about.
So now, a lot of this I'm basing off of, I live in a large metropolitan area, right? I live in San Antonio, millions of people, millions of businesses. My concern more is for people in rural areas who don't have the option to, let their dollar decide. So if I am a minority person in a small town out in East Texas of 3,000 people, so I grew up in a 1 stoplight town in Iowa, right? I think my whole school had 2 Black people in it. That was it. So
I remember driving through Iowa, and I was the brownest person there.
Yeah, we should talk about Jake's drive through Iowa. I'll let him tell you that story off air sometime. But if there's one doctor, there's one eye doctor, there's one regular doctor, there's one dentist, that's it. So the closest town to mine is a minimum 20-minute drive on a highway, okay? And they don't have much more for facilities. If you want to get to a big hospital, you're talking minimum hour drive. So now, if I'm a lower income person of color in that small town, and the only doctor in town goes, oh, I don't treat Black people. I don't treat Black people, sorry. Or I don't treat women. Now I have to forego that care because the burden for me to spend my dollar elsewhere is so difficult. And there's only 2 Black people in town. So out of the 3,000 people that are potential business, he's only losing 2 by upholding that belief. It's not going to impact him enough, those 2 people taking their dollars elsewhere, to force there to be another doctor in town to provide those services. So when you're talking major metropolitan areas, yeah, I can say if you're a racist doctor and I don't believe that, I'll take my money elsewhere because there's other options to go to. But there are people in places where there aren't other options to go to. They can't let their dollar decide what the market offers because they don't have enough collective power because there aren't enough of them in that area.
So basically, because you got to choose one way or the other. I think
That's the third part I have a hard time deciding.
Well, I know, but like the example you gave about the cake was spot on. You know, like that's who should control businesses, and usually what controls whether a business continues to get business is how well do they do business. So you go to a cake shop and they make a shitty cake, and then you fucking make a review, and nobody goes to that cake shop, or enough people go to that cake shop and they get shitty cakes and they lose business. So they have a choice to fix the problem or go out of business. So in the case of the cake shop, they don't want to make a gay wedding cake. They have that right? It's not like they chose not to employ a gay person. I mean, that's something entirely different as far as government regulation is concerned. But when we're talking about, yeah, we don't want to, okay, fine, go get a cake made somewhere else. But maybe enough people say, you have some people that are just, they're going to be like, oh, this is atrocious. I'm never shopping there. Probably never shopped there before because, let's just face it, maybe they aren't married, or maybe they're already married, right? And then you have the people that are more likely to shop there because maybe they stand behind those moral convictions, and that in itself is very important too, especially when considering like religious beliefs. If you turn around and you make a side business, and you're one with the tree fairies and shit, hey, what is this? Oh, this is this and this and this, and I sell Wiccan stuff and I sell tree fairy stuff, and okay, well, I want nothing to do with this. And people like me, and I could speak for Darian on this too, we just walk into your shop and maybe we don't like what it's about, we leave, and we don't turn around and sue you and say you better start selling Jewish shit, you better start selling Catholic shit. So you have that aspect, which I think you nailed, is just like go shop somewhere else. But when it comes to the healthcare thing, that presents an interesting challenge. I would say, enough bad reviews, but I mean, if you've lived anywhere else besides your backyard, there are cities, especially in like state of Georgia, there's cities that are all white and there's cities that are all black, and for reasons. And there's no easy way to go about it. But once you pass a law, once you pass legislation, it becomes law. You're giving the government permission to hold a gun to your head or someone else's head. And at some point, maybe not immediately, but at some point it's going to come around full circle. I think that's what people don't realize, especially with what's going on right now with like all this legislation getting just slammed through the House, into the Senate, onto Joe's desk, is like, yes, we're winning. And it's like, yeah, dude, but you're gonna see what's happening. I mean, if you haven't seen it already, it's coming. It's coming. Don't worry. Like, girls, all these feminists, the neo-feminists as I call them, women can be men, and finally we're to the point where women can be men, and men can be women, and there's no questions. And now men can compete in women's sports, and now girls won't get scholarships for sports. So all the girls that wanted to get some college money or maybe go professional or do the Olympics or whatever, like what are they going to do? So in the case of this very small subset of this example, I don't have the answer, but I can tell you that if you're going to make legislation that affects everything based on a very small subset, that's not a good thing. How does that person get birth control? How does that person see the eye doctor, the ear doctor, with a racist asshole or a sexist asshole or what have you? I don't have the answer for that, but I can tell you the answer is definitely not having the government pass laws to hold guns to people's heads and dictate. Because now you have to sit there and you have to appoint a moral authority. You have to appoint somebody that dictates what are important businesses. And if you ask me, any business is an important business because any business creates jobs, and any business, you know, that creates jobs gives people money, and it gives people money, and they keep the lights on. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, going back on something else you talked about, yeah, there's a lot of people that would volunteer to do work, but you know, smiles and hugs don't pay bills. They don't pay mortgages. They don't keep the lights on. So, in the sense of free healthcare, I don't think you're behind that entirely, but uh,
No.
we're not entitled to anybody's labor, regardless. I mean, and if you think we are, then I guess we can go pre-Civil War, and we could talk about how people felt entitled to free labor, and we know how that went. But uh, natural rights, as Darian said, natural rights don't guarantee you to anybody's labor. That's the point of them. Like, you are not guaranteed for me to fix your computer, or I am not guaranteed for you to do anything for me. But you are guaranteed the right to vote. You are guaranteed the right to possess a gun. You are guaranteed the right to speak freely. You are guaranteed to worship freely.
I am not guaranteed the right to possess a gun. I think me and your buddy, he's this way on my screen.
Uh-huh.
To get along on that.
Well, I'm just saying, everything that is
If I
guaranteed.
want a fucking 50 cal automatic sniper rifle or machine gun or whatever mounted on top of the corners of my house, I should be able to have that.
Agreed. But
I just want all the guns. I want claymores. I want grenades.
I do want to. What I'm saying is, like, everything that we're talking about, that your
You
rights.
said guns, I get excited.
Well, no, yeah, and here's my take on that energy. I'm sorry to cut you off, Jake. As far as my philosophy on all of that, you know, just let people do what the fuck they want as they're not hurting anybody else. Plain and simple.
You know,
Own
And I
machine
see
guns.
what you're saying, dude. It makes sense. There's some stuff I can't reconcile. Like, when I try to think of myself, okay, if I needed to survive with no outside input or controls, right? Because I'm not super wealthy. I'm right in the middle. I have a nice 3-bedroom house. I think we do okay, but we're not super rich. I can't afford to install solar or to build my own personal windmill. So what happens when I can't get access to water? I can't get access to power? Because to survive in today's world, like for me, for my job, I have to have 2 separate cell phones to do my job. I have to charge my machine's panel batteries, this, that. I do this all at home right now. So if I can't get access to power because power, specialized thing, takes a lot of resources to create it, right? So there's not a whole lot of companies who offer to power you. The grid, building a grid to supply a city is a massive undertaking that requires massive resources. I can't generate that or do that on my own. So if you're CPS Energy and you decide, you know what, the whole south side of town is Hispanic, let's just cut them off the fucking grid because half of them make late payments or don't pay their bills. We're just going to cut that section of the grid off. How are those people supposed to rectify that on their own? That's like the stuff that I have a hard time with. I can grow my own food. With enough effort and persistence, I can grow my own food. I can raise my own livestock. I can figure out how to slaughter something if I need to. But chances are I'm not going to figure out how to build a functioning windmill on my property that powers my entire home. I'm just not going to be able to pull together the resources to do that, regardless of how hard I work or how hard I try. So there's just some things like that I wish there's a part of me that just wants to say, figure it the fuck out, every man for himself, because there's a part of me that really feels that way. But then there's another part of me that's like, but fuck though, there's some shit that's just not doable as a sole entity. It requires, that's why we have civilization, because there are just certain things that require the large collective input and effort to achieve. You cannot do it on your own.
But that's where the free market comes in. If CPS Energy decides to cut off that whole section of town, if the market was deregulated, another company could start up and, all right, well, fuck those guys. Buy energy from us. sort of thing.
But they don't want to start up there because the bill pay rate of that sector, due to whatever reason, poverty issues, whatever, is low. Then what happens? That's my question. There are going to be areas that are profitable and not profitable. So, for instance, when I go do in-home, I'm positive it's not profitable for our company to do in-home x-rays in the valley, okay? You're talking 2-hour drive time for one exam. It's much more profitable to do them only in town, where in the 5 hours that I'm going to spend to do that one exam in the valley, I could do 7-8 exams here in town. So it's much more profitable to service this one region. Why would anybody want to service that unless there's something, I guess, dragging you out there?
The collective people who live there can form their own. The collective people can do what they want. No one would be preventing them from doing something. That's what I'm looking at. It is when,
But what if the collective group doesn't have the ability to do so? What if the 300 people that live in that town are so, I guess, destitute or uneducated or lack of resources that they can't hire their own x-ray tech to treat the town, or those 300 people don't have the resources. Even if all 300 of those people came together, they're not going to build a power plant that can power their town.
It's actually not that difficult to do. I'll be honest. I've been looking into that a lot lately.
You're probably a very intelligent person, but you have to remember that there are people out there who, through no fault of their own, didn't receive the right genetics to be able to have, I guess, certain skills. Some people have mechanical intelligence. Some people have book intelligence. There are people out there through a mixture of, like, some people are just born stupid. Like, it doesn't matter how much they try, they are not going to have the potential that other individuals have. But that doesn't mean that they should necessarily die off. It's not the Stone Age. At one point in time, it was that way. We had to be that way to survive as a species. But I would hope that we're beyond the point where we have to do survival. Survival of the fittest was a necessity at one point. That's not a necessity anymore. If we can make things better for people who can't make things better for themselves due to no fault of their own, why not? And I'm not talking about people who are lazy or who are out, doing drugs or whatever, but people who legitimately, through no fault of their own, just don't have the ability to make their lives better because they're not intelligent enough, or they have a health condition, or whatever it may be. Like, we can do that. So why not, other than selfishness and pride?
I think that if the markets were deregulated, let's just say the government stopped existing and the energy company cut off that section of town or that whole town or whatever, I absolutely believe that others would step in to fill the gap because there is money to be made. And of course they'd look at it and decide the best way to get their profits and whatnot.
PJ, get out of the cabinet.
But I absolutely believe that people would take care of others and work with others.
I guess I have less faith in humanity than you. I think that while there are people who will take care of others, are there enough of those people with a wide enough variety of skill sets to adequately take care of the people who the others won't?
I think
That
after
makes
some
sense.
initial hiccups, yes. I mean, obviously, there's going to be growing pains in a situation like that where, there's no authority pointing a gun at you, telling you have to do this or that, um, because humans, our society has evolved to be sheep. We're followers, and so there would certainly be some growing pains in that regard. However, I do believe that there would be enough people to, people would get together and they would start working together, and it would no longer, the collectivism would be community versus black, white, that sort of bullshit. A political
You
party,
don't think
red, blue.
people will revert back to, because that's how it used to be. It used to be community, and it was. I mean, you're kind of talking about the predecessor to the society as it is now. Colonial times when you moved over and the community had to provide everything for itself. And it was very black-white. If you didn't meet the community standards and there weren't enough people like you, then you were fucked. Like, it's really easy, I think, to say the community will take care of the community when you fit the majority of the group. If you're the odd man out, you don't get taken care of by the community.
Let me ask you this though. Let's say we're talking about a community though. So everybody is left to their own devices, and then how does a community form? Like, how does a community form from just a bunch of people being themselves? Essentially, it's I realize that you make pots, and I don't make pots. I kill deer, or I farm, and Darian kills deer, and essentially we just come together because we know that everybody provides something to the community, right? Somebody provides, like, somebody's a doctor, somebody's a farmer, somebody's a hunter, somebody makes pots, somebody makes guns, who knows what. But when you're talking about, like, people being, I guess, ostracized from a community, like, that's kind of a good thing. And like, I can understand, like, it could just be like, oh, we just don't like her because reasons, but it's kind of a good thing, right? Like, there's that would mean that, like, there's a standard in the community. Like, maybe it's a written rule, maybe it's an unwritten rule, spoken word, unspoken word, but there's some kind of standard for that community. There's some kind of moral level. I mean, just follow me on this. So if we kick you out of the community,
you're talking about, though, if you're ostracized for a specific reason. So you're talking. You said, everyone provides them. I make pots. This guy hunts deer. This guy makes blankets. So what about the guy who can't offer any services through no fault of his own? The guy who was born with no, severe mental handicap, right? He can't provide anything to the community. He doesn't have the capacity to provide anything.
That depends on the community, though. So in some communities would just realize this guy he's dead weight, essentially, right? And they would get rid of him and he would die. And some communities would, I mean, not every community is the same. Like, if you just look at, like,
we should be beyond that.
No, we shouldn't. See, what you're thinking on morality. And when you think about morality, like, let me just broaden your horizon. Imagine you're back in Iraq, or you're in Afghanistan. You here as an American, right? You have these values and these moralities and things that you hold in an esteem. That's your community. That's your social guidance. That's your whatever. That's your 10 commandments. You go to another country, and it's okay for grown men to touch little boys. It's okay for 14-year-old girls to be wed from their family to somebody else. Is that right by your standards? Probably not, but that's their community, and that's their choice. And that's the whole point of individualism, right? Like, they do their...
Those are all choices. Those are all cultural choices. Being born mentally handicapped...
No, that's... But I'm going... What I'm saying in some communities, people would have that heart, and they would realize that. And they would bring that guy in, and they would just take care of the guy till he naturally passed, or succumb to some other something, you know. But in other communities, they would just, okay, well, he has nothing to provide us. He's a leech. It's us or him, and they would get
300 just threw him off the cliff.
Whatever they did. But who are you to judge them? Because like I said, like that is a different, you're not in that community. And if you are in that community, you find yourself in that community where they don't care about that guy.
That individual didn't get to choose what community he was
but
born
at the
into.
same time, this is my community, and you don't get to choose what I do in my community. You see, now you're becoming the government, and you're telling me what I should do in my community. And I'm trying to get you to understand. I'm trying to get you
anti-abortion. I find it weird that you
don't go to abortion. We're talking about communities. We're talking about communities right now.
It's a valuing life thing.
No, it is a value. It is a value that you have, and you are not that community. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. Like, ignore the U.S. Imagine it is apocalyptic.
You don't get to choose what community. That's the thing.
Yes, you do. You do.
You
You do, because you can leave. Who's stopping you from leaving? If that community is stopping you from leaving, we can have that discussion too. But you being an individual,
you have the resources to leave.
Yeah, but so what you're telling me is, right? So you have this moral standard, and you don't like the standard that the community has. But now you can't leave because you don't have the means, right? Not because they're not letting you leave. You just don't have the means to leave. So now you have a choice. The choice is
I'm the individual born with the intellectual disability.
Okay.
I didn't get to choose to be born in that community, right?
Okay.
So I just get to be chucked off a fucking cliff like in 300.
Well, so are you?
But I didn't have a choice in that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to get you to understand here is that is a community thing. That is a social contract. That is the rights that society, that community feels, and thank God you don't live in that society. You don't live in that community, but you can't sit there and look at other communities because first of all, you're not in that situation, right? And second of all, that doesn't exist anywhere in the U.S. Doesn't exist. But apocalyptic U.S., we're all fucking tribes, like Indians, like Native Americans, right? And if you have Down syndrome or you're an idiot, like you have nothing to provide you can't even be a laborer. We can't even just hand you a till and just tell you to go plow a field. Like that is just the way it is. Now, what you are understanding right now, I hope you are, is that the only thing you can control is what you do, right? That's all you can control. Now, you have a brain. You're able-bodied. I've seen you do a lot of shit. It's that right there is individualism. You can make choices. You can discern right from wrong. You can reason with yourself right and wrong. There's a lot of things you can do. But when you sit there and you look at another community, because that's what we're doing right now. We're looking at another community that may or may not exist, and we are judging them. Like, we're essentially infringing on their right to individualism. Like, because that is their choice. Like, that they get to choose
who's fighting for the right of that disabled person who can't fight for himself to not be thrown off the cliff.
Why are you fighting?
Well, okay, hold on a second.
Don't throw me off the cliff. I want to be a part of a different community that doesn't throw me off the cliff, but he doesn't have the ability to do that or say that or to go to that other community.
Darian.
Well, that would first of all, that would still be a violation of the non-aggression principle. But that's neither here nor there. My question is actually more about, so if this disabled person is born in this community or wherever, are we required, is it my responsibility to take care of that individual? Is it your responsibility? Is it Jake's responsibility?
I don't think it's anybody's responsibility. But
okay,
I would hope
hold on. This
as
is
a society, as advanced as we are, that we have enough resources to take care of individuals.
Who pays
like
for
that. In our society?
No, this community we're talking about. Who's paying?
Well, no. Hold on. In our society, who pays for it?
In our society, it depends on the family. the family resources, because if you're wealthy enough, you're not.
We'll say the family's got no. We'll say the family's got no resources. This disabled baby was born. The mother died. No other known kin. Who pays for it?
Then it would be the state. They would be awarded the state.
So now, if the state's paying for it, the state does not make any money. The state takes money from us. So ultimately, we're the ones paying for it. So
but
you
why
are
is
saying,
that so problematic?
I'm just clarifying. I'm trying to.
I don't mind giving a small fraction of my money to care for someone who cannot care for themselves.
Okay, so if that is your,
I feel like we're far enough along as a society to be able to do that. Why have what we have and the resources that we have to be completely, and this is why I don't have faith in humanity, that they would come together and take care of each other, because people are selfish. Me. You're taking my money that I worked for to provide for someone else.
Okay, now one that was a multi-part question, and that got lost because I've got now other stuff to jump into. So it is your choice to take care of that individual, but you're saying then it's okay for the state to hold a gun to my head and force me then to take care of that individual as well.
But nobody's holding a gun to your head if you don't like it.
If I don't pay taxes.
What happens
if I don't pay taxes? They'll hold a gun to my fucking head.
They'll take your house. They'll take your car.
I literally don't know anybody that's had a gun physically held to their head.
It's a threat of force.
Well, they arrested Al Capone that way with guns for tax evasion.
That was also how many years ago?
But they still do it. They still the IRS. The IRS has a SWAT team. They can kick down your house and take your shit. They can legally take everything you own if you don't pay taxes.
So now, okay.
Yeah,
so hold on.
The person is not making enough money for the IRS to give enough of a shit to do that.
Well, I'm telling you. So when you go to your employer, whoever that is, redo your W-4 to where none of the money gets taken out, and then at the end of the year, when the IRS says you owe us $5,000, don't pay him. Then don't pay him again, and see what happens. And basically, under threat of force, is what's going to happen is they're going to take you to court. They're going to win money, and you continue to not pay them. They will then confiscate your stuff and put you in jail. That is a gun to your head. I mean, they're not going to kill you, but they are going to put a gun to your head. Well, yes. Yes, they will take your shit. It's just right now they automatically take your shit because you filed your W-4, so they withdraw the money. And now you basically you don't even know where your taxes go. I mean, you kind of do. They go to Pakistan for gender studies. They go to Argentina. They go to Saudi Arabia. They go to fucking Germany.
Hold, okay, before we're getting way off where I wanted to jump in on this one little thing here.
Go for it.
So back to the disabled individual.
Mm.
So you're saying that you believe it's okay in a case like that, and you feel comfortable contributing that. Now, what about somebody who says, well, I'm transgender, I have gender dysphoria, and you need to pay for my sex reassignment surgery?
That's not a disability, though.
Gender dysphoria is in the DVM or DSM.
That doesn't mean it's a disability. I have.
It's a mental disability.
The DSM. It's not. It's a mental condition, not a disability.
Well, okay. Up until the recent politics, it was considered a disability or mental defect. Right. I can look it up if I need to, but so you're saying then in that case, no, they don't. We don't have to pay for that. So we currently have a case that is probably going to be going to the Supreme Court, or I think maybe even already did, in Idaho, where a prisoner says, okay, I've got gender dysphoria and is wanting gender reassignment surgery with the bill, paid for by the taxpayers. And their
That's
thing
a
is, while
difficult
they're
one for
under
me.
incarceration, the responsibility of their health care falls to the state, which, as we mentioned earlier, the state does not make money, it steals it from us. So we, the taxpayers, would have to pay for that surgery. And
I guess it depends on whether you feel that is elective or non-elective. I'm kind of on the defense about that. So are you going to die without getting the surgery? Are you going to have major negative impacts to your quality of life or ability to function without this procedure? Like measurable impacts, then yes, I think that's necessary health care.
well, according
if
to
it's not impeding your ability to function in society, then it's elective at that point.
well, according to the trans activists, it is necessary. So then it's mandatory that we taxpayers who may not agree with it are forced to pay for it. And that's what
I mean, you're already forced to pay for it if you have health insurance. I mean, what do you think your premiums are for? If you go to the doctor once a year, the majority of your premiums are going to pay for other people's health care.
Oh, I'm collecting on that shit right now. Everybody's paying for my ass.
But you know what I'm saying? It's a collective system. That's how it works. Taxes are the same thing. It's a collective system. And Medicare and Medicaid is a small fraction of that system. Your example is troublesome for me because it's a prisoner. They've lost their rights. To me, it's like when you're in the military. There are rights that you have forfeited by voluntarily deciding to break the law and become incarcerated. So do I think that we should have to pay for their surgery? No, they're incarcerated. Now, someone who has gender dysphoria who's not incarcerated, I'm assuming they're going to be using their health care, because if they're disabled enough that they qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, I'm sure there's other issues. I'm sure that's the vast minority of transgender people seeking transgender reassignment. I don't know the specific statistics, but I'm assuming that the vast majority of people getting gender reassignment surgery that aren't incarcerated are on private health care. I would assume that it's a very small minority of people who are receiving gender reassignment surgery who are actually on Medicare and Medicaid utilizing your tax money. But at the same sense, they're utilizing your premium that you're paying if you're a generally healthy person, and nobody complains about that.
And that's why most people who, when the whole Obamacare thing just said, fuck it, didn't pay for it, took the $100 or $150 fine, and didn't have insurance because it's cheaper. The insurance system is fucked, and that's because of it's not free market. But I'm getting back to if for human rights, natural rights in general, your right ends where mine begins. And so no one is entitled to someone else's labor. Because no one is entitled to someone else's labor, I don't think that any of that, if they can't pay for it themselves, sucks to be them. Open a GoFundMe or get their friends to chip in and snip it off if they want. But having pleading that it's
they don't actually snip it off, they invert it, but
whatever. I'm sure there's some snipping and some leftover parts. But yeah, I mean they got to snip the balls off. right?
No, I'm pretty sure they utilize the vast. So the penis, as far as I'm aware of, is utilized to create the vaginal tract, and I believe they use the skin from the scrotum. And I'm not 100% for sure, but I would assume they would need to create like labia and vulva somehow. And you don't just grow skin without skin expanders. And I'm
I'm
not
talking
aware.
about the actual testicles, the balls themselves. Those don't get shoved up inside. Those end up in a little jar like your dogs.
We don't just like put them on tubes and make ovaries from your vas def.
Make ovaries? What? No. You don't.
I said we don't do that.
Oh my god.
I mean, technically, that's all your balls are, ovaries that fell out of the body.
No, they're not. They're
in utero.
No.
It is true.
No.
When you are an embryo, you have what's called gonads. And gonads are sexless sex cells.
Mm-hmm.
And you either have a testosterone wash in utero, like if you're male, right? That's when they become testes and grow a little penis, or those cells turn into ovaries and a clitoris and a vagina. But when you are a embryo, you are sexless until the point in the embryonic stage where the cells actually begin to divide. So as men can get breast cancer, reason being the entire embryo is nearly covered in breast cells, and as it hits the stage of pregnancy, that tissue recedes only to the breast area. You can get breast cancer in other parts of your body if there are breast cells that somehow get deposited.
I agree with
Richard Roundtree, who played one of the most badass characters, Shaft, had breast cancer.
And I know guys that get. I've heard of guys getting breast cancer, but what I'm saying is, ovaries. What are ovaries? I just clarify that. What is an ovary? Like
okay. So to me, testicles.
Did you not? Okay, again, real quick to interject. This is exactly what's wrong with our education system.
I just think we need to have this woman on more often, but continue.
Okay.
I like the hand gestures.
Ovaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
They sit in the pelvic cavity, and they contain all of your egg cells.
Right. So right? Wait. So they're hollow cavities that are full of eggs. Egg cells.
Yeah, which testicles are hollow cavities.
No, they aren't hollow.
They're full of sperm cells, which is like the male version.
I want you.
Egg cells.
No, this is essentially what
your half of the DNA and our half of the DNA.
What is in a testy? A testy itself, it's like a spaghetti noodle that's fucking coiled up into a tight ball. So it's not a hollow cavity.
You have the vas deferens, and the vas deferens connects to your testicle, and your testicle house your sperm cells.
Yes, but the testicle is not at all like an ovary. An ovary is a hollow cavity that holds egg cells. The testy
I don't think they're hollow. I don't think ovaries are actually hollow.
What is it? Like if you cut open a vagina cross section, boom, and you look at the ovaries, they're hollow.
Well, first of all, if you cut open the vagina, you wouldn't see anything because the ovaries are nowhere near the vagina.
Yeah, they're all the way at the top. I get that.
No. That's the uterus.
Thank you.
So you have the vagina, vaginal canal, then you have your uterus.
Jessica,
right?
you're playing semantics right now. If you cut open the whole reproductive system of a woman, my point is the ovaries are hollow. Open any nursing manual. They are full of eggs, a finite number of eggs. This is true. When you look at testes, you keep referencing vas deferens. I'm glad you remembered something, but it goes down into the scrotum, and they are coiled up like little spaghetti. They are strings. That's what is in there. It is a giant thing of strings, and the sperm starts off on one end, and as it makes the journey, it matures, and then it sits there until it's time to go. So I understand how the embryo turns into this, and I get that. What I'm saying is a mature woman and a mature man, the ovary and the testes are nothing alike. Yes, they are a pair. There is a pair.
No, I'm not saying they're physically alike. I'm just saying it's the male version. If you had to equate female ovaries to something on a man, the closest the closest analogy of an ovary in a man would be the testicle. It is the part of your body that produces the reproductive cell that goes into the process of making a child.
I would say, I just want to shout out to Darian for the visual. That was great.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Getting off of that, I'm not entitled to your money. Essentially, what I'm saying is I'm not entitled to your labor. Like, I'm not. Now, I will say.
I don't think anyone's entitled.
I'm not saying you said that directly,
No, okay.
but I'm saying you do say that indirectly. Indirectly, you may
Yes.
you were telling me I agree with you, Jake, but then you say other things, and I'm. But here's the thing: is
You're right. Indirectly, I think people should be good enough people to want to help others less fortunate.
Yeah, I would agree.
But if that help is forced under threat of violence, is that really being a good person?
Maybe it's because there's so.
Is our society
like
really
so
good if we're
out there.
forced to do these things?
Maybe if we would have done it in the first place, there wouldn't have been people wouldn't have felt the need to force others to help. That's my question. Why did if like you're saying, people would just come together and do this if there weren't the laws and the regulations there, right? There was a point in time when the laws and regulations weren't there. They were created because it wasn't being done. People, I guess, if people came, so if you have people who are down and out, need help, right? You're saying the community will come together and help those people. Well, those people weren't helping. People weren't coming together and helping them out. That's why the laws or the regulations or the programs got created in the first place. So to me, the fact that there was a feeling of necessity to create those laws in the first place shows that people don't just come together and do it without a threat of force, because people are shitty.
But what about those people, like, what about so for example, it's Social Security. What is the purpose of Social Security?
It's supposed to be insurance.
Social Security is supposed so from what I understand, I don't know a lot about Social Security, but from what I understand, the concept of when it was developed was basically the idea that people weren't saving up for their retirements on their own. Basically, they were making poor money decisions. They were getting to the age where they no longer could physically work and then had no way to take care of themselves. So someone came along and said, look, since you're not responsible enough to set aside money and allow it to accrue interest and build, so that when you get to the point where you can no longer physically work, you have money to care for yourself to the end of your days, we're going to do that for you, because we have all these crippled old people running around just in squalor. That's kind of my understanding of what the concept was, is because you aren't investing it for yourself and now you're walking around in squalor and agony, we're going to take it and invest it for you so that it's there when you get to that point.
So,
but they don't invest it. It's a slush fund.
Well,
yeah, I think the way they manage it is bullshit. I don't think I'm going to see a dime of what I paid in, and I think if I invested it on my own, I could make way more money.
Yeah, but so
do you think then we should be able to opt out of Social Security?
Yes. But then comes in the problem, if you can opt out of it, you have those individuals who aren't responsible, who are going to opt out so that they can spend the money now because they aren't going to responsibly save for later.
Sucks
it's like
to be
a
them.
double-edged sword. I just think they're all it's complicated.
But
the bigger problem is that it's really a Ponzi scheme, and if we opt out of it, they're not going to have any money to pay the people who did contribute in, and that's what they're living on. You know, they didn't plan to retire; they planned on living off Social Security.
No, yeah, I'm not a fan. I do think we should be able to opt out. I think that it's a failed program, and we need to look at other options.
So
one thing that makes it really hard is a lot of companies used to offer pensions, right? You worked, it ensured company loyalty, right? You work for us for 20 plus years, you get a pension. Almost nowhere offers pensions anymore. It's pretty much non-existent because I think a lot of it stems from overpopulation. There's so many people. We're so disposable. They don't care about loyalty to the company because they can always find someone else to fill your slot. So I don't know. I think Social Security is a failed experiment, but then how do you take care of the people who only earned enough to live day to day, even being responsible, and now, because of advanced age, can no longer physically work?
I mean,
because you can work hard and not have a lot of money. I think that's a common misconception. People think if you work hard enough, you can become rich. Yeah, that's true for some people, but there are also people who work incredibly hard and are responsible and manage their money, but what they're being paid compared to cost of living wherever they are is not, you don't have $1,000 a month to put into a 401k or into bonds or securities or to invest in stocks.
I'm going to just time out real quick. So one thing, you said you would opt out if you had the option, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. But at the same time, you do realize it is a Ponzi scheme. Like there's just, I mean, for one, when it got started, you had a growing population, and now I'm not saying it's not growing, but the amount of people paying in versus the amount of people going on it, that's not working out. But all this stuff that you're talking about, I hate to tell you, but it all boils down to individualism. I mean, if you look in some countries, your parents get old and they move in with you, and that's their culture. And in some families in the U.S., it's still that way. There's some people, you know, I'm not gonna like denigrate certain ethnic types, but there are some people where your parents move in with you when they get old, and they don't use Social Security, or they do, but they just move in with you because it's there, and they're Americans, so they're entitled to it. But the whole idea that it's the government's, and I say this loosely, but specifically, it's somebody else's responsibility for your life. That is probably the most un-American thing ever. Like, you might as well be responsible if I go commit a crime. So okay, at some point, I got a job and I'm making money, and I have to think long term. I have to think of, let me prolong the duration of satisfaction and enjoyment for the sake of, you know, a better life. You know, if you look at people, I'm sure there are some amenities that these people have. They have a television, maybe they have a cell phone, maybe they have something fancy that they could go without, but they don't. You know, the beauty of this is nowadays we have the internet, we have knowledge at our fingertips, and you're telling me that people, I don't know what, for the past 20 years haven't figured out, you know, how to save money, how to know what they're worth, how to seek different jobs, how to delay the gratification, to suffer now so that there has to be a point where somebody is responsible for their actions as an adult, and it's not put on other taxpayers or anything else. Because at that, you know, like I said, I could make the argument, if, well, it's my job to make sure that someone that didn't have enough money, well, why didn't they have enough money? I mean, am I going to sit here and analyze what they spent their money on for since the time they were 16 until the time that they were 62. For 50 years, what did you spend your money on? How many cars did you get? How many TVs did you buy? How many cell phones did you go through? Did you get an iPhone every other year? Did you upgrade? What did you do? Like, where are you spending your money? What kind of food are you eating? Like, what are you doing with your money? How much frivolous spending goes on? Because I'm telling you, there's no instruction book to life, but at the same time, there is so much knowledge out there that people should know, at least by now. And if they didn't know from their own, they should have known from their parents, and their parents, and their parents, and the parents before them. And going back to individualism, the most responsible people in your life are your parents from age 1, age 1 to 8 to 10, whenever the socialization process is complete. These are the people that are responsible for setting you up for the rest of your life. Your work ethic, whether or not you feel you're a victim in life, who you're going to vote for, what kind of God you're going to worship, all these things, and if somebody teaches you anything, if you have kids, like, you should teach your kids, fuck Social Security. You're not going to get it. You need to, do this. You need to get education, or you need to join the army, or you need to do something with your life, because your life is up to you. You should not rely on anybody else. And that's okay. I will make an argument. I will make one argument for this Social Security in the sense of I get laid off and I need 6 months to find another job. I can kind of get around that. But I can't get around paying for somebody that made bad decisions their entire life. I don't want to pay for someone that has 5 babies from 5 baby daddies and not married. Like, I don't want to pay for that. I don't want to pay for someone that, wants to just because I'm saving my own money and I'm paying for them. How is that fair to me? How is it fair that I did 20 years in a job and I'm going to get a pension? And, just how much more money would I have? I could have saved more. Now I have a pension and I'm going to get another job and I'm going to do this and I got a 401k. That nobody made me pay into that. I made that choice. That was my choice to make. It was my choice to put money in savings. It was my choice to play the stock market. That's what I did. But these are all things that I am doing now because I could have more money now. I could have a newer truck. I could have nicer things, a bigger TV. But I can't do that because I know that I'm going to get old. And at some point, I'm going to need money. And at some point, whoever, my wife is or my whatever, my husband, they're going to rely on me. And you're telling me that these people don't know better? That they just can't get a better job? They just can't curb their spending? I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think people make a conscious choice to spend money when they have it, and that's their problem. That's their fault, and I shouldn't be responsible for it. I shouldn't be responsible for that, just like you shouldn't be responsible for my unpaid parking ticket or, whatever other action I choose to make. That's a negative action. Could have negative consequences in the future. You know what I mean?
So do you think we could solve, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. You know what I mean? Why should I do without if I'm working hard to supply for somebody who isn't working hard or doesn't have enough because they aren't doing without, right? Do you think, because I know Drake talked earlier a little bit about, education, how terrible our education system is. And I agree. As you know, I'm not planning on having children. And one of the reasons is because if I did have children, I would want to hire them private instructors in homeschool only, which I'm not in a position to do. Do you think that we need to add stuff in? Because the fact of the matter is, while you have this knowledge to pass on to your child that you're going to have, what if you are a child of someone who doesn't have that knowledge, right? Because kids become what their parents teach them, right? Like the vast majority of your skills, the vast majority of who I am, the older I get, I am my father and my mother, 100%. The skills that I have when it comes to budgeting, everything, it's all my parents. My spending habits, I can see my parents and myself. So if we don't have someone to teach, if we're not going to have eugenics and we're not going to have forced sterilization and birth control and this and that, the fact of the matter is people are going to make poor decisions, right? There's going to be that lady out there who has 15 kids, knowing she can't afford 15 kids, that is entitled and expects help for that, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Like, stop having freaking kids, right? But once again, now we come into choice. If she's making that choice, who am I to stop her, right? Free will, right? Freedom to do what you want. But those kids are now going to grow up into adults, and they have no one teaching them these things, right? So they don't stand a freaking chance from the start, okay? And they become the majority of the population because it's the irresponsible people making the choices to have these massive quantities of children, or, you know what I mean, to not control their reproductive choices and rights. So how do we break that cycle? How do we stop that?
You quit rewarding the behavior. That's exactly what you do. It would be like a rough decade or two, but you quit paying for baby daddies to leave that, because that's what it is. You incentivize, when back before we had the state taking care of illegitimate children, illegitimate families, like a woman got pregnant from a guy and she wasn't married and he dipped. Guess who took care of it? The woman and her family. And that woman had to make better choices. So she didn't fuck the next guy that came into her life. She married him. And then they had more kids. Or the guy got the woman pregnant and he stayed with her. But when you incentivize people to have kids and the government pays for them, why stick around? I mean, I'm just going to go do my thing. I know the government's got you, and your family knows the government's got you. So you have to like quit incentivizing the behavior. Like it's gonna suck. Yeah. You don't think those kids are suffering now? Of course they're suffering now. There's still nobody in the household. The mom's still not teaching them shit. It's not like because she's getting paid for them that they're better off. Okay, maybe.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying how can we actively go forward and break that cycle? So is it, I guess, acceptable losses to allow?
Well,
so we stop incentivizing, right? But we want to give these children a fighting chance. So what sort of stuff do we need to be implementing in our education system, or is it just an acceptable loss to let these
Nobody said it's an acceptable loss. That's not the phrasing I would do. The first thing you do is you just turn you just turn it off. That's what you do. You turn it off. Like my biological mom. I like how people like to use this term, biological this, but my mom, my mom left my dad. They were married. He was abusive, right? And for 18 years she did not collect child support. You know what she did? She worked her ass off. She moved in with my grandpa for a little bit for support, like what would normally happen. Your family would help you out. And then she found a man worth a damn. And then she married him and had my brother. And the rest is history. But she didn't take a check from the government. She didn't take a check from, my...
What if she didn't have those family resources?
Then,
is it acceptable that you should have just
but that's life. Life is a struggle, Jessica. If anybody knows life is a struggle, you should fucking know. No, but no. What you're telling? Let me ask you this. But no, hold on. So if you make a bet,
household on my own.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, if you make a bad choice, should you be responsible? Should you be able to bear the consequences of a bad decision? If you decide to go to Vegas and spend all that money that you just worked 60 hours overtime, and now you can't pay the rent, you can't pay the lights, you can't pay...
I'm a big believer in personal responsibility for actions and choices.
So here's what's going to happen. She goes up...
When you bring children in, child did not have any choice to be in that situation. That child didn't. So, and this is like when I brought up abortion earlier. This is where one of those things where I don't understand the cognitive dissonance for people who are anti-abortion, right? Sanctity of life. That child doesn't have a choice, right? It So when I bring that child into the world now, that child didn't choose for me to make a poor fucking decision.
No.
Right? It's
No.
a living, breathing being with feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It didn't choose for me to make a piss poor decision to open my legs, not on birth control, with some trash ass person. Okay? So we cut out all support systems. That kid is on the streets, is starving, probably being abused to get what he needs. Why should he have to endure that as a living, breathing human being with emotions who had no say in being in that circumstance? That's where there's a cognitive dissonance for me. I agree that woman who made that poor choice should have to eat the repercussions of her actions. She made her bed, now lay in it. But at the same time, I'm like, but that kid didn't. That kid didn't. He didn't make the poor decision. He's the result of the poor decision.
Now you're gendering the kid.
I don't know how to reconcile that for myself.
Well, let me answer this. So you made it very clear that you're not going to have kids. You said this to me several times, and you just said it on the podcast. Yeah, I'm not going to have kids for reasons, right? But I mean, yeah. You could afford to have a kid, right? Like you probably could afford to have a kid, if you think about it. It
would be very tight.
But you could do it.
Here's my thing. If I got pregnant right now, right? If I found out tomorrow, like, oh fuck, I'm pregnant, I would make it work. I'd figure it out. One, I'm fortunate that I have a mother-in-law who would absolutely love a grandchild and would be more than happy to be in a supportive position and help us out any way she could. I know my parents would help me out. And I also know that even if I didn't have those support systems, anytime I've come to an obstacle in my life, I've figured it the fuck out.
But you see what you did right there? You're a fucking adult. That's your problem. You're an adult with a brain and a conscience. So you just said right now, you would figure
her up. That's it.
You would, yes. Fucking throw her. She's not a sheep. You would figure it the fuck out. So why is it that you would figure it the fuck out and someone else wouldn't? Now, you know why they don't figure it the fuck out? Because
maybe this is prideful. I assume that 3 out of every 4 people that I meet are probably fucking retarded. Like, just the reality is, the average person that you interact with, you're like, oh wow. Like
I don't know. I interact with high intelligent people. I don't know about you. Everybody I talk to.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not talking like friendship wise, who you choose to interact with. I'm talking about your just day-to-day chance interactions. There's a lot of people out there that I'm like, oh man, it's not like, no wonder you're sucking at life. You're not very smart. Okay, that makes sense.
But here's the thing is, the way that the government is set up, it is so big. It is a giant titty. Like, people don't have to think. And when somebody tells them something, they fucking believe it. And they feel
you don't like sucking on titties, Jake?
I don't what?
You said the government was a giant titty, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. Like,
I thought you liked sucking on titties.
No, I don't.
So now you're confusing me with your metaphors about whether you like the government
what I'm saying is that the government is a giant bottle. So they've created, essentially, as you said, a bunch of stupid people. They don't think, they just do, and they believe everything the government tells them. And they want no responsibility. It's almost like the Matrix. It's like people in the Matrix.
Okay, I see what you're saying. The dumbness is a result of the government provision.
Yes.
Instead of the government provision being a result of the dumbness.
The government's only job is to keep us American. That's pretty much their job.
Instead of people were stupid, so the government stepped in, you see it as the government stepped in, therefore making people stupid.
Independent.
Which I can see how that would be.
And now you're at a point where now every 3 out of 4 people you meet is stupid, and you wonder why. And 3 out of 4 people you meet think Joe Biden is awesome, and now you know why. And 3 out of 4 people you know think that your labor, your medical labor, those 60 to 80 hours you put in a week should be free, and they should be guaranteed to your labor / your money. Like that is where we are, because if you go back 100 fucking years, if you weren't smart, you didn't make it, and if you didn't make it, there wasn't the woman that was going to sleep with you to continue on that trend. It was just like basic biology. If you weren't succeeding, chances of you finding somebody that you could have a family with were slim, because you had no money, you had no job, you had no future. Like, who wants to be around that? I don't think you would want to either. And
I guess some of my thoughts are more
humanitarian.
There's a lot of things
yes,
you say
I get it.
Agree with. No, I think a lot of it's like, I can see what you're saying. Society says you should be compassionate and want to help others.
But
I'm
I am
like,
compassionate.
Well, I don't want to be a bad person, so. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff I agree with, because I have figured it the fuck out. You know what I mean? I didn't grow up with wealthy parents. Have my parents helped me? Yes, of course. My parents love me, and when they can help me, they help me. But nobody paid for all of my college. I joined the Army to pay off $40,000 in school debt, served for 6 years so I could qualify for the GI Bill after, got out, went to school. When I wanted to move to Texas, I liquidated my mutual fund. I sold my silver at point price to my dad, sold my motorcycle, my four-wheeler, and because I had to come up with a year's worth of rent, upfront cash, to get an apartment without a job down here while I got my state license.
Was any of that easy? Was any of what you just said, was being in the Army for 6 years easy? Was going to college? No, what I'm saying is, was accruing $40,000 in debt and not having a skill or a trade, was that easy? Was that an easy feeling, knowing that you owed somebody money and you got nothing out of it? Was having to sell your shit to move? None of that shit was easy. Welcome to life, honey. No. Life is fucking hard. It is a truth. There are two truths. One is that life sucks and you die, and unfortunately sometimes there's taxes. But you realize that and why should anybody else's right?
So why can't other people figure it out?
Exactly. But instead we need to pay for other people, because they haven't figured it out. And as long as you keep paying them, they're not going to fucking care to figure it. They're not going to try, and why should they care? That's all I'm saying. Yes. No, is somebody going to starve? Yes. But we have plenty of money to feed illegal aliens, plenty of places to put them up, give them health care, and we can't even feed homeless veterans. We can't even feed people living under bridges. We can't even take care of the homeless camps in California. But, we can feed everybody else. So when you think about it, like, yeah, there's some people that need help, but we don't even take care of them with the money that we take from people. We don't. We really don't. But we're getting long on the time. I know. I'm gonna let Darian go, because I know he's been itching to. I'm gonna let him go. Go ahead, Darian.
I've got a couple questions, because been trying to find a point where I could jump in and kind of wrench the steering wheel away and guide us back to the original topic, which was, uninformed voters and stuff. But so just going to run down quick bullet points with you for your quick hot takes on them. Gun control.
Do not believe there should be gun control.
So you're not one of the Army people who say, well, I was in the Army and I have my expert badge, and no civilian should have weapons of war.
No, the whole intent is so that a civilian populace could come together with enough weapons of war to overthrow a tyrannical government.
There we go.
In my opinion. That's the intention of the Second Amendment, so that you can form militias. If I can't form a militia with strong enough firepower to even come close to competing with my government that has become tyrannical, then there's no point in the Second Amendment at all. I think if I want grenades, I can have grenades.
But what about the National Guard? The National Guard's there. That's the militia now.
The National Guard.
I know. Hey, I'm just parroting some of the things.
I mean, once again, though, that's controlled by the government. That's the force we're trying to overthrow. So the National Guard is designed to protect the country on the home front, the military is to protect the country elsewhere, right? They're like the backup system. While the main military is out, being imperialistic as we are, they're here just in case someone lands on our soil. They're a backup protection. The whole point of the Second Amendment is so that a non-government-based militia can form in the event that your government becomes tyrannical and needs to be overthrown. There is no purpose in it if I can't amass the same type of firepower.
And I've got news for you. We've reached that point.
So, no, I do think that if you are convicted of a violent crime, like a felonious level violent crime, do I think that there should be restrictions? But do I think they should be very specific? I don't think there should be any broad restrictions, like to say you shouldn't have a gun because you have a psychiatric record. Well, what the fuck does that mean? I had a psychiatric record my entire 6 years in the military. I've never flown off the handle and harmed anybody. I responsibly ran an entire arms room. I don't think there should be any restrictions to gun ownership. Should be microscopic, very, very specific, and very, very limited. You commit a heinous act, I can understand why. They're probably in prison anyway, so it's probably a moot point. But yeah, no, I think you should be able to own any type of firearm you want. But if you do something stupid with it, well, then you pay the repercussions of that.
All right, what about student loan forgiveness?
Join the Army. That was my student loan forgiveness. They paid $40,000 of loans in 3 years and gave me another $60,000, I think is what ended up going towards my schooling after. So $100,000 right there.
What if you can't join the Army? What if you only have one arm?
That's not an option for you.
Or you're a conscientious objector, or all sorts of other things.
So I do think that the borrowing rates on student loans are higher than they should be, in my opinion. Rather than completely forgiving loan debt, if there was some way we could reduce the interest rates. I mean, there's one of the student loans that I got. I did get one $5,000 student loan. The interest rate on that thing was higher than the interest rate on my car loan, and I have stellar credit. I have an 813 credit score.
But you know why that is, right? You know why student loan rates are higher than mortgages and vehicles?
No.
Because you can
unsecured debt. Because
you can repossess them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's an unsecured debt.
You got to look at it like if you're a bank from that, the interest rate's not going to change. It's just not. If I can recoup my losses, then I can, but I can't physically.
Another thing to do is to remove student loans from the equation. If nobody can get student loans, nobody's going to go to college. Therefore, forcing universities to drop their prices to an affordable fucking rate that people can actually work and pay to go to school.
So yeah, I there is hope for you. There is hope for you. Who guarantees the student loan rate? Who guarantees the student loans period?
A big part of it is the fact that it is government backed, and
it is government backed.
They can't be discharged, which allows these lending companies to be, predatory. If it were an open free market, everybody would look at it like this is predatory lending. You're giving 18-year-olds, $100,000 loans.
I was 17 years old when I put myself $40,000 into debt for school. I wasn't even old enough to legally sign the paperwork.
That's okay.
My parents had to sign it with me.
I took $20,000 out in student loan debt when I was 20. So I've been there, but so what do you think? Should we pay off the student loans though? No. So what should we do?
So I don't think we should pay them off. I do think we should address the predatory practices. I think there's some sort of middle ground we can come to. I do understand, but once again, kind of mess you got yourself into. So if you went to school for 10 fucking years for a career for fucking anthropology, I got a master's degree in anthropology. It cost me $90,000. But how many anthropologists are actually out there making money? When I chose my degree, I chose it because it was something that was a short amount of school, that I knew my GI Bill would cover, right? I knew it was a growing job sector, and I knew that the pay relevant to the cost to get the degree was greater, if that makes any sense. I don't think we should forgive the student loans. I really don't. I think there's so many people who go to college as a hobby and not as something to further their, and that's cool. If you want to go to college as a hobby, that's fine, but then pay for it. I would love to go to, there's tons of college classes I'd love to go take just out of sheer interest, in that subject. But I don't do it because I know I can't afford that shit,
Once again, because you're a reasonable adult and you have a brain and you use it and you're not a sheep. Okay.
And my take on that whole thing is, you know what? If they're going to do something like that, let it, just all they need to do is change it and let those student loans be discharged through bankruptcy. And stop future government backing. Stop future government backing. Then all the people who are whining and crying about it, they can go through bankruptcy. And sure, their credit's going to be fucked, and they're not going to be able to get that new BMW.
Already. Their credit's probably fucked already, though, if they're behind on their payments. So,
well, it's not that they're behind on their payments necessarily. They're just crying about it because they're $150,000 in debt with a liberal arts degree that's not marketable and can't get a fucking real job.
Mm.
Or they're, I'm making air quotes right now, but my camera's, not on. So they're journalists. Writing
anthropologists.
Like writing all the anti-Trump stuff, and now they're all getting sacked because,
Trump's out of office.
No one cares. Yeah.
So they don't have hit pieces.
So, let them discharge their debt through bankruptcy, stop government backing of student loans, and less people are going to go to college. But you know what? Go to trade school, or,
not everybody needs a degree.
Work and pay for it. I know, of course. I mean, who's going to be our strippers? If everybody goes to college, who's going to be our strippers?
Yeah, Jake.
I'm about to be a dad. I'm not about that life anymore.
You still look like you're about that life. You either look male stripper or bouncer at strip club vibes, and I think it's the tank top that's giving me that vibe. I don't know why tank top say male stripper to me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the sentiment. You got a couple more questions, Darian?
The last kind of hot topic, drug legalization.
Yeah. I think it should all be legalized. If you want to make that choice, one, it takes the power out of the cartel's hands, right? The reason they've amassed so much wealth is because you're paying for the danger involved in what they do, right? So we can eliminate a lot of the seedy aspects of drug use.
But the poor CIA. Think about the CIA agents who aren't going to be able to get their dark money and funding if we open up.
To sell their opium from overseas.
Jake was not aware of that. Jake was not aware of that, where there were, the big opium production was, when the U.S. got involved.
That's surprising. I thought that was like a well-known thing, that the U.S. government had like massive poppy fields back in the day and were huge opium heroin distributors.
Oh yeah, our government's so fucking corrupt.
I think it should all be legalized. I think, to me, it's no different. One, people are doing it anyways, whether it's legal or not. I think all the other things that come, the bad behaviors that come with drug use are still going to be illegal. If I'm robbing stores to support my drug use, I'm still going to go to jail for robbing stores, right? So why do we need to criminalize the drug use? Because there are some people out there who utilize drugs and don't have criminal or bad behaviors. It varies from individual to individual. It's just like with alcohol, in my opinion. There are people who can drink recreationally, socially, for fun, and there are people who have a fucking problem. I don't think any of the drugs out there should be classified or treated any differently than what we treat alcohol. Personally, I think whether it's good or bad is highly dependent on the hands and the individual that it's in. So I'm fine with it. One, creates jobs. Two,
So
someone will capitalize on it.
there was an interesting thing that Darian and I were talking about. We're talking about that topic. What about like should there? So if we just legalized everything, right? Do we have like do we have like another alphabet agency that's involved that like talks not talks that standardizes like the actual drug itself? So we're saying cocaine is legal, heroin's legal, meth is legal. Is there a separate agency out there that is verifying, like, do you involve more government or do you involve less government in the sense of,
Yes.
well, what I'm saying
That's
is,
the gamble and the risk. You're talking about efficacy and safety.
correct.
Is my heroin heroin?
Yeah.
Is my cocaine cut? So kind of what Darian talks about a lot, that's going to be a free market thing. If you're like, one, so people think everyone's just going to start using drugs. You can make heroin legal tomorrow, or methamphetamine. I'm not going to use heroin or methamphetamine because I'm not interested in it. Like, that's not my thing. I don't not use drugs because they're illegal. There are certain drugs I don't do because I'm not interested in doing them. So one, I think that anyone who's interested in doing drugs is probably doing so already. Okay. Two, I don't think you need to regulate it. It's just like with the marijuana industry, right? So if you're selling me jank shit, I'm not going to keep buying from you.
What if it kills you though?
Because it's,
so
I mean, you take that risk with anything.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, when you're talking about drugs as in prescription drugs, there is some kind of alphabet agency that's involved with whether or not that prescription drug you're going to take, what the side effects are, is it going to kill you, is it effective? So why wouldn't it be for controlled substances? Why would you?
Like, when you're talking about legalization of drugs, that's recreational, in my opinion. It's not a necessity. It's a recreational. It's just like, okay, supplements, Jake, something you can get on with. You take supplements, I'm sure, for your weightlifting, right? So lots of supplements, herbal supplements, stuff like that. None of that's FDA regulated. Half of it's not even what it says it is. There's no agency verifying that what's in that is actually in that and that it does what it says it does. But people still take the chance and put it in their bodies every day, right?
That's a true statement.
Like,
yeah, it's a good take. I respect that definitive position.
That's the closest example I can think to of like an unregulated substance that people willingly take and do and spend money on regardless. Weight loss products,
sure,
stuff like that. None of that is regulated.
Darian?
No, I was just gonna say that I mean, do what you want. It's your body, it's your right. In my opinion, if you want to take drugs, that's part of your natural rights. What you put in your body. My body, my choice, right? So, and I do have.
Ask Cole.
Oh, I've got there's one more,
Oh, one more.
which is COVID and masks.
Oh shit! I'll be right back.
But I also, hang on, I've got to find that quote. Son of a bitch.
You have to read the quote before you ask the question. Is that what it
Well,
is? You
well,
sound
no,
like
go ahead
you sound
about
like a
the
CNN
COVID stuff.
reporter.
Well, no, the COVID
Um,
masks and stuff. I just had a thing about it because the drugs thing is, in my opinion, a natural right. Um, if somebody
but
wants to
you're
take
not
it,
going to contagiously contract heroin from me. Like, if
right?
I'm shooting up heroin, that, like, short of me running at you with a needle, you're not going to spontaneously contract that from me just by being in the general vicinity of me. If you're asking, I guess, can you be more specific in what you're asking? Like, are you asking, do I think masks work, or do I think people have the right to choose whether to wear a mask or not?
Just in general, mask mandates, stuff like that.
I think businesses have a right to decide whether they want their customers to mask or not. That goes back to the whole baking the cake thing. They can decide what they're going to allow or not allow of their patrons, just like a bar can decide to stop serving you if they think you've had enough and don't want you in their bar anymore.
Now, what about businesses that are like required, or requirements, so to speak?
Essential services.
Yeah, police
So,
station, court. Here's one: the courthouse.
essential services.
Because we in Idaho, there's a case with Alan Bundy. You might remember him from they took over some part of a national forest in Oregon, and the charges
Yes,
were.
I do remember that.
But he had a
So
court
I
case,
think
and he was there outside, but they would not let him inside because he wasn't wearing a mask, and he refused to wear a mask. So he was actually found in contempt of court, or because he missed the court date, even though he was there present, but they would not let him in and attend without a mask. And I believe he was arrested.
In essence, that's a tough one. That's kind of a complicated situation because he's required to be there. Because for most stuff, like my water, right? I don't need to go somewhere to get my water. I can pay my bill online. I can pay it by mail. I can pay it over the phone. If you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine. Don't go out and occupy public spaces. I do think that masks work. I have been working healthcare the entire pandemic. I have not gotten sick, but I also religiously wear a mask, and not always an N95. I have access to N95s, but when I go to the store, stuff like that, I wear a regular mask that any consumer can buy. N95s do leak. I have the job I'm at now. When I was in Corpus in the Valley, I was doing probably 30 COVID patients a week, and I'm having to lean near these people to lift them, move them. And if my glasses are fogging, my N95 is leaking. The nature of my job, the amount of movement I have to do, it doesn't perfectly seal. But it seals enough, and it stops enough of the largest viral load that my healthy immune system can handle it. I haven't gotten sick, but I also don't go anywhere without a mask. So are they foolproof? No. Can you still get sick while wearing a mask? Yes, of course. Do I think that they mitigate risk, reduce risk? Yes. When it comes to whether you should have to wear one or not, I guess you could argue the question, no one's forcing you to wear one. You can access pretty much all services nowadays without leaving your home. So if the grocery store that I want to go to requires that I wear a mask to enter the building, then I can still obtain my groceries. It's not that they're saying we aren't going to sell you groceries because you're not wearing a mask. They're saying you just can't come into our store to buy the groceries. They can be delivered to you. You can pick them up curbside. So we're talking something that travels through the air and is a contagious disease. There also is a precedent in our country during the Spanish flu. It was required by law. You could face jail time for not wearing a mask in public.
How did that work out?
Well, people still died, but that was because we also didn't have modern medicine like we do now to put people on ventilators, and we didn't have plasma treatments to boost people's antibodies. I don't think that was a result of them wearing or not wearing masks. People died because medicine wasn't where it is now. You combine the two together, less people have died than the Spanish flu of 1918. But my point is, we're not, as far as I'm aware of, we're not throwing anybody in jail for not wearing a mask, and nobody's refusing to sell to people for not wearing a mask. They're just refusing to sell to you in store. Oh, you can get pretty much anything you need offline. So if you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to, but then just don't solicit stores and services that require mask wear. You can register your car online. You can renew your driver's license online. I mean, I just don't see, I guess I don't understand what's the difficult issue with it. If it's what if your city isn't mandating, then don't wear it. But if people don't want to be near you or don't want to let you in their store, well, then once again, you made your bed, lay in it.
Yeah, I live in a place that nobody's scared. We go to, the bars are open. In fact, Idaho State Legislature is passing a resolution that forbids mask mandates. And yeah, I like where I live. One quote I wanted to bring up was actually part of.
Just a heads up, guys. I think my headphones are playing my head mic.
One is from Marbury versus Madison of 1803. All laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. So keep that in mind. If you can hear me.
Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. These were beeping every 5 seconds saying they were dying, so it was cutting out your voice. Hopefully you don't have too much sound backfeed. Jesus, Peach! Oh, goddamn.
Show us that pussy.
He made a really poor decision for a 20-pound cat with arthritis. He was like stretched like a bridge between the table and the hutch behind me, but didn't have the space to make the leap. He's old. He's an old boy.
Yeah. But the quote was from Marbury versus Madison, 1803, which states, "All laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void." So just keep that in mind. But there is, case law stating that if they're unconstitutional, they're null and void. So technically, you can do drugs, and if you want to fight it, pay for it and fight it, you can go to court using that. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much my questions. Jake, did you have any follow-up?
No, just center the asshole.
Oh, I gotta pull one up.
What did you just say?
Asshole.
We're gonna asshole.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, maybe
asshole,
he said outro.
No, asshole is actually a card game, and they're just questions that are designed to kind of prompt conversation. And
Oh, okay.
so let's see. All right, Rattle, give me a number. Preferably not too high, because I'm going to be clicking that many times.
9.
9. All right. Do you have any enemies? If not, who is the closest to being your enemy?
Uh, well, I don't really think I have. Oh no, I have enemies. Where to get started? Probably, I'm sure my husband's ex-wife would consider me her enemy. Um, Probably my old supervisor would probably consider me his enemy. Several individuals at my old job who were not great coworkers. So yeah, I would say I definitely have some enemies, some people
She gets around.
who
So
if it
so
was the
don't we
zombie
don't want to work with her.
apocalypse, we would be seeing who could fire faster.
Gotcha. Well, that's Asshole, and people can actually go to asshole.io if they want to check it out for themselves. It's a really cool little game.
Well, my. This was a good one. I really appreciate you, Jessica, for giving us some of your free time. That was fun.
Well, I appreciate you guys being willing to chit chat and listen to me and all my indecisiveness on whether I care about people or don't.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything I can say, it's that you're definitely whatever the hell you just said. What? All I saw was cat. But yeah, we got to sign off. We have things to do. I got to go clean litter boxes. I think Darian's got to like go wipe his ass or some shit like that. I don't know. Hey,
And I've got to sleep to work 60 hours next week, so.
Yeah. But dude, thank you very much for coming on. I can't say that enough. That was a lot
Final
of fun.
thought.
And yeah, we gotta. I'm gonna skip the final thought because it's the same every week.
No, we have a guest, so she gets the final thought.
Oh, I thought it was your final thought. I'm sorry. Sure.
I don't know what a final thought is.
Did you
Well,
learn
it's just your
anything?
final thought. Your final thought on the matter. You know, anything.
Final
point
thought
you wanna
on the
make?
matter.
Do you regret voting for Biden?
I think we all have different opinions and beliefs based on our different experiences in life, and it doesn't make any of us more or less good or bad. It just is what it is, and we got to figure out how to function with each other.
Yeah. All right. Well, you heard it from her.
I do have a Jefferson quote.
No. You're done. No more. Every week it's like a quote and then the same quote.
Oh. Taxation is theft.
All right.
Don't forget.
Yeah.
Nobody forget. Taxation is theft.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you again, Jessica, for coming on. You have a good week.
Thank you, guys. You too.
Work smarter, not harder. All right. Well, that being said, I'm Jake.
I'm Drake.
And this is Jake Drake Show. We see y'all next week.